An unfaithful mother and her daughter? When Darrell and his family came to live in the neighborhood, I immediately disliked him. He was a local college professor and was as arrogant and self-centered as most of the professors I had studied under. His wife, Judy, on the other hand, was as nice as anyone. She was a little plain, always putting her hair up in a bun, and it seemed like every dress she wore was a shapeless sack. But she was nice, and I enjoyed talking to her. She and Darrell also had a 16-year-old daughter who was a walking dream. Kara was only 16, but she looked and acted all of 21. I lived alone. My wife, with whom we'd lived for 11 years, had run off with the drummer of a rock band, a guy 10 years younger than her. I hadn't heard from her and hoped I never would. If she had just left for another 6 months, I could have filed for divorce on the grounds that she had left me, and I would have gotten the house and everything else, and this cheater wouldn't have gotten a dime. Besides living alone, I also worked from home, which gave me plenty of opportunities to watch Kara sunbathe in a bikini. The little teasing girl knew I was watching her and tried her best. From my home office window, I could look right over the privacy fence, and more than once, I saw her looking in my direction as she rolled over on a blanket to sunbathe. Every 5 minutes, she would roll over. She knew what she was doing to me, and I had come to find out if her mother knew it. Like I said, I liked Judy, and I enjoyed talking to her. She had only lived in the neighborhood for about 2 weeks when one day I heard her swearing, if you could even call it swearing. Looking outside, I saw her fighting with her lawnmower. I went out to see if I could help her and found that she had poured water into it. I took a wrench, pulled the plug, cleaned it, and set it aside. I told Judy we needed to let the vapors from the cistern evaporate and invited her into the house for coffee. She was smart, witty, fun to talk to, and we soon got into the habit of having coffee almost every morning after her idiot husband left for school. I was smart enough to keep my dislike of the asshole to myself, as I enjoyed Judy's company and didn't want to drive her away. We had our little morning ritual for about 6 months, when one morning Judy asked, "Is she bothering you?" "Who? What do you mean? Is Kara bugging you? I know what she does when she assumes you're working in your office." Maybe just a little. Please remember that even though she just turned 17, she's still a kid. She may be trying to be 21 years old, but she's still a kid. I know. And I also know what happens to guys my age when they get into relationships with girls her age. You have nothing to worry about, but don't expect me to ignore that view. But I started ignoring the view out the window because it became too distracting. I installed blinds, and whenever Kara left the house, I would pull them shut. This, of course, pissed her off, and she started finding new ways to tease me. One afternoon, she came to me to borrow a bar of butter, completely naked. Oh, she was wearing 2 strips of almost nothing, which she called a bikini, but we both knew she was naked. Fear of jail was the only thing that kept me from pushing her through the door. Another time, she came up to me fully clothed and offered to wash my car for $5. It was needed for the car, and I told her to wash it. But when she came to the door to get the money, she was wearing short shorts and obviously no bra underneath a soaked t-shirt. All I could do was stand there and stare at the most perfect couple I'd ever seen. No 17-year-old girl should be allowed to have a view like that. I did my best to stay out of her way and stay away from her. She had a hard time finding someone to do anything to, and it wasn't me. But fate has a way of putting what you don't want right in front of you. It was a Saturday night. I was walking my dog, and as I walked a block toward home, I noticed movement in a car parked 2 houses down from mine. There had been a series of burglaries 2 blocks away, and everyone on our block was in neighborhood watch mode, so I slowly made my way to the car. The 2 people in the car were too absorbed in their occupation to pay attention to anyone outside, and I managed to get up close to them. Those 2 people were Kara and one of her boyfriends. They were trying their best to have fun. Nothing criminal here, and I was a good guy. I had no intention of ruining their party, but my dog had other plans. He started barking, and the boy opened his eyes wide, saw me, and tried desperately to push Kara away. Kara looked around, saw me, and her face went pale. I turned and walked away, and then I heard a car door slam, the engine start, and footsteps followed me. I turned around and saw the car turn around and disappear into the street, and Kara was running after me, trying to button my blouse. "Are you going to tell my parents?" I just looked at her and she said, "Please, please don't tell them." I wasn't going to do it, but she didn't know that, and I was mean enough to let her think I would. After all, this little girl was deliberately teasing me, and I felt I was entitled to a little revenge. I looked at her sternly and was about to say something when she said, "Please don't tell them, and I'll find a way to thank you." I was starting to think about how she might do that when her all-seeing, all-knowing mother came running to the rescue. "Go inside, young lady." Judy gave me a long look and then turned to follow her daughter into the house. I never found out how Mom knew something was going on, but the next morning, Judy came in for coffee and asked me what was going on. I told her about the neighbor's observation and that I had walked over to the car. I saw two kids kissing and turned to leave. There was no threat to the neighborhood, but then a dog barked and startled the kids. Judy threw me another long look. "I care a lot about my little girl, and I can see that for some reason she is very much in love with you. You are only man and blood, and if I don't do something to take your mind off her, sooner or later you will find yourself in a situation where you will forget that she is only a child, and then everything will go to shit." She stood up, did something to her hair, and it cascaded down to her waist. She pulled the shapeless sack she was wearing over her head, and I saw the most fantastic body I had ever seen. Kara was gorgeous, but her mom made her look like a baby. "Stay away from my baby, and I'll belong to you for as long as you want." I sat back in my chair, too stunned to think straight. "Do we have a deal?" "Deal," I barely managed to wheeze out. "I'd never been in your bedroom, and I had a strange desire to see what your bed was like. She was like fire and did her best to burn me to the ground. When she left me 3 hours later, I was both sorry and happy to see her go. Sorry because I wanted that body again, and glad because I think one more session of lovemaking would have killed me." That morning forever changed our morning coffee routine. It was now morning lovemaking. Judy was like a drug to me. I just couldn't get enough of her. Even when my wife and I were on good terms, we only had sex 3 or 4 times a week. Judy wanted it 3 or 4 times a day. When she left me, I was exhausted and began to fall behind in my work. I almost missed a couple deadlines, which is tantamount to a death sentence if you work from home. It was only a matter of time before Judy kicked me out of my job, but I was powerless where she was concerned. All it took to make me solid as a rock was to see her hair fall to her waist and realize that the next thing I would see was her fantastic body. I belonged to her and I loved it. I could barely remember her daughter's name, and then I was saved. It was Tuesday afternoon, and Judy and I had just finished our 3rd lovemaking session of the morning. I noticed movement, glanced at the bedroom door, and saw my brother Marv standing there watching me. He began to quietly undress, and I realized what was about to happen. This wasn't the first time Marv and I had sex with a girl alone. Judy's eyes went wide and she tried to pull away from both me and Marv, but we both held on to her tightly and she couldn't break free. I left the bedroom, took a shower, and headed to my office to try to meet my next deadline. An hour later, I looked into the bedroom and Marv and Judy were still there. I had been working in my office when Judy left and had no idea how angry she was with me. Would she come back for coffee in the morning, and would I ever see her again? Marv walked into the office. "Where did you even find her? We need to chain her to the bed so she can never escape." "I love my brother. He came by to see if he could move in with me for a couple months. He had just been laid off and couldn't afford to keep an apartment. I told him it would depend on circumstances." "What circumstances?" he asked. "If she comes back, and she may not, you have to help me make her happy." And then I told him that making love to her could cost me my job. You have to help me get away from her long enough so I can get some work done. He smiled and shook his head. I'm not sure the two of us can do that. I mean to keep her happy. I ran into Kara at the Safeway that night. Thanks for not telling my mom what I was doing in the car with Jimmy. I smiled at her. Believe it or not, sweetheart, I was once a teenager with raging hormones myself. Well, thanks anyway. I owe you one, and I always pay my debts. Judy surprised me and came over for coffee the next morning. I poured her a cup and she took a sip and then asked, "Who was that yesterday?" I told her and she asked if he was still there. I said I thought he might still be in the guest bedroom. She finished her coffee and got up. Let's go wake him up. Time's running out. As she was arranging her hair as she was about to leave, Judy asked me, "Do you have any other brothers?" "3," I answered. "Do they ever stop by to see you?" I said, "From time to time." She grinned. That would be nice. And walked away. I told her the truth and lied to her. I did have 3 other brothers, but they never showed up. They were the ones who took my idiot wife to a rock concert and then managed to get her backstage where she met up with the guy she ran off with. That would have been fine, but I found out later that they participated in seducing my wife in the same room where my wife was making love to the drummer, and that at one point they incited her. They were not and never will be welcome in my home, but I am anything but a welcoming host. I went to the phone and called 3 of my friends. I told them what was going on and asked if they wanted to participate. The next day, after making love to Judy twice, I went to my office and met my final deadline. For the next year, Judy was our cheating girlfriend. We rarely got together, all 5 of us, but on any given day at least 3 of us would do our best to make sure Judy came home happy. Once or twice, I even brought a couple of my girlfriends along, and Judy never seemed to mind. One day, when all 5 of us were there and taking turns making love to Judy, the front doorbell rang, and when I went down to open it, I saw Kara standing on the doorstep. She squeezed past me and turned to face me as I closed the door. My intention was to get her back outside before she heard what was going on upstairs. But before I could speak, she pulled her sweater down over her head. She was braless and smiled at me. "Do you like my breasts?" She was just gorgeous, and I said so. She reached into the pocket of her skirt and pulled something out and held it out to me. It was her driver's license, and she said, "Look at the date of birth. I'm 18 now, and you don't have to run away from me." And then Judy screamed, "Make love to me!" Kara giggled and said, "I don't think you want me to come upstairs with you in your bedroom." At this point, Judy screamed again. I told Kara that it wasn't a good time and maybe she should come back later. "No way. I've waited too long for this. And if we can't use the bedroom, the living room is fine with me." As I led Kara into the room, she kept looking over my shoulder at the stairs. "Do I know her?" There was something familiar in her voice. I nodded negatively, and Kara started on me. We made love to her, and then my brother Marv came in. Marv laughed. "That's too bad. The lady upstairs could certainly use some help. Come on, brother. It's your turn again." I helped Kara to her feet and kissed her on the lips. "Thank you, sweetheart. You were great." I walked her to the door and let her outside. 5 minutes later, as I was making love to Judy, I looked over my shoulder and saw Kara standing in the bedroom doorway. Then my brother walked in, and he made love to Kara. Then I wondered if Judy would be back in the morning. If she did, I bet it would be one hell of a conversation. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.